Hi everyone, in this video I want to show a game between FIDE Master Pisu Robert Daniel from Romania and Grandmaster Dmitry Svetuskin from Moldova. The difference rating between these two players is almost 400 elo points. This game was played in International Chess Open from Alba Iulia round 2. Let's analyze this game from the point of view of opening, middle game and endgame. In an opening, we need to develop our pieces, make castle and connect the rooks by moving the queen. In the game, white started with d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, allowing the darker bishop to enter the game, knight to c3, and bishop to b4, pinning the knight, and this is the Nimzo-Indian defense. Queen to c2, this is the classical variation, short castle, knight to f3, developing another piece. Beside this move, the most played move here is a3, getting the bishop pair. Black continue with c5, attacking the center, allowing the queen to come to a5. White took on c5, knight to a6, looking to recapture with knight g3. White wants to put the bishop on the long diagonal. Knight takes on c5, bishop to g2. In this position, black should continue his development of his light square bishop, and for this he can play b6 and bishop to b7. In the game he moved the same piece, knight f to e4, intending to take on c3, creating double pawns for white on the c file. White king is safe, he only needs to move his darker bishop and his opening is done. Black took on c3, b takes, d6. In this position, white can put his bishop on the most forward available square, f4, and after e5, kicking the bishop, black will have a backward pawn on d6. Another way for white, instead of placing his pieces on the most forward squares, is to neutralize opponent pieces in his territory. Black has a knight on e4, so white attacked it one more time with knight to d4. The queen and the bishop attacks this knight f5 defending, but in the same time creating a backward pawn on e6, rook to d1, bringing his least active piece into the game. Queen to e7. Another way was to develop the bishop from c8 to d7. Moving the queen in an opening is the last thing to do. Knight to b3, attacking the knight from c5, and also the rook from d1 pressures the pawn from d6. Rook to d8, defending d6 pawn one more time. Better was to finish the opening. Bishop to e3, attacking the knight one more time. And finally white finish his opening. His king is safe, rooks are connected, and all other pieces are developed. In the middle game, white needs to attack opponent weaknesses from the 5th and from the 6th rank, and after this involve all his pieces into the attack. In our case, black has two backward pawns on d and a6. Regarding the weak squares, he has some on a5, b5, g5, h5, but black can push the pawn to defend these squares, but in the same time he will create new weak squares. So in this position, white targets are the pawn from d6 and the one from e6. Looking at the pieces, all stands good on their position. The only piece that needs improvement is the rook from a1. The rook can be brought on b1, putting pressure on this file. In the game, black continue with queen to c7, moving for a second time the queen in an opening, defending the knight from c5 for a third time. White was threatening to play f3, kicking the knight away, and take on c5 twice with the knight and the bishop, winning a pawn. White continue with f3, black took on b3. The problem with this move is that black improves white pawn structure, and in the same time he opens the a file for his a1 rook. Knight to c5. From this position, the knight can easily be kicked away with b4. White continue with f4, preventing black to play e5, knight to d7, intending to push e5. This knight moved 4 times already, and black did not finish his opening. The drawback of this move is that the knight interposes between the pawn and the rook, and white can attack d6 pawn one more time with queen to d3, which happened in the game. In any position we need to make attacking moves and ask ourselves what is the drawback of our opponent's last move. Knight to c5, bringing the knight again, attacking the queen, and white took the knight. Black cannot take with the pawn because white wins the rook, so he needs to take with the queen. Queen to d4, proposing queen exchange, and in the same time looking at a 7 pawn for a second time. Black declines the exchange, white takes the pawn, rook takes, queen takes, and white is a pawn up, and we can notice that black has a isolated pawn on b7. In this endgame position, the plan is different for us. We need to push our best pawns, and for our opponent, we need to attack his weak pawns. In this position, black has weak pawns on b7, d6, and e6. If white manages to take this pawn from b7, he will have a passed pawn on the b file. Black continue with h6. Maybe black wants to play g5, queen to d4, centralizing the queen, not allowing black to push e5 or d5. Also, white wants to push e5. This queen move on d4 allows black light square bishop to develop with b6 and bishop to b7, which happened in the game. Had b6, e4, f takes on e4, queen takes on e4, preventing the bishop to come to b7, b5, trying to undermine white pawns from the queen side, and white goes forward again, trying to exchange queens. Black doesn't want this. The problem of this move is that white can push c5. We can see that black gave a check, and after c5, black cannot attack with the pawn due to the pin. In the game, we had d5 and queen takes on b5. White takes the material, and he has two connected passed pawns on the b and on the c files, so he's winning in this position. Besides pushing these pawns, white can also attack e6 backward pawn. Black continue with queen to a2. This is a move forward, and it's not preventing white from pushing his pawns. Instead, in the game, white played queen to b6, attacking the rook, rook to f8, c6. The problem with this move is that connected passed pawns should stay together. White should do everything not to lose them. White could have played bishop to f1, and if black tries to play queen to c2, like in the game, attacking the rook and the pawn, white would be able to defend easily his pawns with rook to d3. So, in the game, we had the c6, queen to c2, attacking the rook and the pawn, queen to d4, defending the rook, but b3 remains unprotected and black takes it. So one of the two connected passed pawns is gone, which is a big mistake from white part. White played rook to e1, moving away from the queen attack, queen to a3. Better was to attack the pawn from c6 with queen to b5, queen to b4. White wants to exchange queens, and if black takes, he will fix white pawn structure. Queen to a2, controlling c4 square, queen to c5, going forward, controlling a7, not allowing black to give a check. A rook to f7, bishop to h3, attacking e6 pawn for a second time. Also on g2, the bishop was blocked by this pawn chain. Rook to a7, queen to d6, e6 pawn is attacked for a third time. White is following one of the two correct endgame plans to attack opponent weak pawns. Queen to d2, attacking the rook, bishop to e6 check. We can notice that white has a pawn majority on the king side. King to f7, queen to e5, defending the rook, bishop takes on e6, queen takes on e6, queen takes on c3. White played queen to e3, forcing the queen exchange because the queen attacks also the rook from a7, and in this position black resigned. Resigning in this position, it's premature because each player can take these pawns and white will remain with 3 versus 2 on the king side, and black can can draw this position. Let's see a possible continuation after the queens are exchanged. We have d4, rook to e6, rook to a2, rook to d6 attacking the pawn, rook to c2 attacking the other pawn, rook takes, king to g2, rook to c2 check, king to h3, and black can hold this position. For example, after h5, rook to d6, g6, rook to d7 check, king to h6, rook to d6. If white tries to pin the pawn and then push f5, black can go back with the king, and it's very hard for white to progress in this position. Black rook looks at h2, so if the king moves forward, black will take these pawns, so a draw would be the outcome of this game. So this was the game between FIDE Master Pisu Robert Daniel from Romania and Grandmaster Dmitry Svetuskin from Moldova. I hope you found this video useful. Please watch other games from my channel and leave some comments and suggestions in the comment section. See you next time. Bye.